Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Notes by Alex. I hope you're all doing well. It's really sunny outside, so even though it looks kind of dark in this room, I'm doing the best I can with lighting. Yeah, I don't know. I gotta get a ring light or something, I guess. So what is this video going to be? I'm still humming and hawing about the title of it. I'm gonna be recommending a book, but I'm also gonna be talking about the advertising surrounding this book and why it bugged me slightly. It's such a minor thing that honestly, I don't know that it warrants a whole video. But I am going to recommend the book and then tack on some complaining at the end because I love complaining. So in February, I read Swimming in the Dark by this guy. I'm going to try to pronounce his name. I should have looked up one of those YouTube videos where it tells you exactly how to pronounce it, but Tomasz Jedrowski. I'm really sorry, everybody. It is a Polish name by a Polish writer, a very talented guy, clearly. So Swimming in the Dark is a 2020 novel by this gentleman. It apparently took him 7 years to write, and then it was part of this really intense bidding war between different publishing houses. I think with good reason. It's an excellent book. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try doing a recommendation review kind of thing without spoiling the book, really, besides just a plot summary. And then we'll get to the second part of the video, which will be complaining, and I'll probably spoil it a little bit more. There's also going to be spoilers for Call Me By Your Name, which is another book. Both good books, both worth reading. If you don't want either of them spoiled, you should definitely go read those before watching this. They're both worth the read, for sure. Okay, but so Swimming in the Dark, it is a love story. It is a gay love story taking place in communist Poland in the 80s. The book takes a frame narrative. The narrator, Ludwig, is... How did I do with that, by the way? So Ludwig is living in New York City, and he is recounting his time in Poland, and he's recounting a love he had with a gentleman. I'm going to try and pronounce it. I think it's Janich. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Janich, I think, is how you pronounce it. But so he is recounting his relationship when he was a younger man in Poland with Janich. And it goes from there. They meet in the summer. They're working at an agricultural work camp. They're both in their like early 20s, I would say. They meet and there's attraction and passion fairly quickly. And once the work camp comes to a close at the end of the summer, they go about their lives. And the book is kind of just recounting as they're becoming young adults and how they grow together. And again, this is all taking place in communist Poland in the 80s. I wouldn't say at the start of the story that Ludwig is a big fan of the Communist Party, but throughout the story, reasons stack up as to why it's fair, and he really loses any faith he might have had that it's best for the country. Groceries don't have enough food stocks for people. The healthcare system becomes overwhelmed, and people can't get appointments to get life-saving medications. The flip of that is that Janich gets a job with the Communist Party, and he kind of works his way through the ranks. He's working in an office with the party. So he's really motivated not to say anything bad about them. The Communist Party in Poland in the 80s did not end well, to say the least. It did not work. It was not what's best for the country. One thing that I really liked about this novel is that Janich isn't a villain. You really understand, first of all, why he might have faith that the party is going to pull through, but you also get a sense of how he gets to the point where even if maybe the party's not what's best for the country, people got to a point where they didn't see any other way out. I mean, Ludwig really dreams of leaving Poland, and he wants to get out of there, which is feasible, and it's a frame narrative, so obviously he goes to New York, but you really get a good sense of why Janich and presumably lots of other people living in that time kind of saw it as, that's life. This is our country. Let's make the most of it, because what other option is there? Both the main characters have really compelling reasons for either wanting more out of what their country's offering or deciding to stick with it and to try to build a life out of it. They're both presented very fairly. And again, one of the choices was clearly correct in the end. But hindsight's 2020, I suppose. Large parts of the novel are how this love continues despite opposing political views. Now, I don't necessarily think that a couple with opposing political views cannot work. It probably depends on the country, and I would say based on your circumstances, there's probably lots of couples that believe in different parties and vote for different things and make that work and respect the differences. Not always, but I have faith that that can happen depending on the circumstance. However, the setting of the story is one in which what you believe in is going to severely impact other people in the country, including the other person in the relationship. Ludwig and Janich, they both believe in different things, and from each perspective, they kind of see the good and bad of both their choices, but they're almost inevitably being tugged. That tension is a big part of the book, and I thought it was great. There's a lot more that goes on. There's quite a bit of ground that gets covered in a fairly short book. I guess I won't say much more than that. It's very beautifully written. It's a very beautiful love story. It's definitely worth your time. I would say it got a lot of praise in 2020 for a reason. So yeah, I'm recommending Swimming in the Dark. I guess I will end that part of the video there. And now I'm going to complain. So let me just find the quote from Oprah's magazine about Swimming in the Dark and how they chose to review it and market it. Imagine Call Me By Your Name set in communist Poland, and you'll get a sense of Jedrowski's moving debut about a consuming love affair amidst a country being torn apart. So Call Me By Your Name is a love story between two young men. It was written in 2007 by Andrei Asiman. Man, it's like literally every name that's not Alex I can't pronounce. Yikes. Anyways, it was written in 2007. It's a love story between two young men. Also a beautiful book. Also, highly recommended by me. I actually liked Swimming in the Dark better, but it's not a competition. So Oprah magazine decided to review Swimming in the Dark and say, imagine Call Me By Your Name set in communist Poland. Let me put on the screen a list of the similarities between Swimming in the Dark and Call Me By Your Name. Number one, they're both gay love stories. They're love stories between two men. That's literally it. I'm exaggerating a little bit. I'm sure that you can find similarities between these two books. So here's one. There's kind of a retro nostalgic feel to both of them. I mean, communist Poland, not much nostalgia about that, but it's set in the 80s. There's 80s references in Swimming in the Dark. Call Me By Your Name, I believe, takes place in the 70s. And if you've seen the film based on the book, they do a fairly good job of giving it that very like nostalgic retro feel with the soundtrack and just the look of the movie. The book is very similar, but there's almost nothing about these love stories that are similar, except that they happen to be about two men. I don't know why this bothers me so much. I think like the thing is, I wasn't as big a fan about Call Me By Your Name. I liked the movie a lot, and then I read the book after, and it wasn't what I thought it might be. I don't know. I don't want to make this video too long explaining what I liked and didn't like about Call Me By Your Name. But it was pretty good. Whereas Swimming in the Dark, I thought was great. But so I saw that advertising comparing the two, and I said, well, okay, I'm not a big fan of Call Me By Your Name, but I liked it enough that I will give Swimming in the Dark a shot. And I thought Swimming in the Dark was really, really good. I feel like unless your point in pointing out the similarities is to warn literal homophobes, comparing the two books is kind of setting people up for disappointment. The thing about Call Me By Your Name is that the parts of it that I didn't like aren't actually bad things. I'm going to get into spoilers here for both these two books, so I guess just stop watching if you've made it this far. The relationship in Call Me By Your Name takes a good chunk of the novel to get going. The book's narrated by Elio, and this guy Oliver is staying with his family over the summer, and he doesn't really know how Oliver feels about him. And a large part of the book is his internal dialogue, during which he's struggling with, does Oliver like me? And also, is Oliver even gay? Like he doesn't know that. And what I will say, what was kind of cool about Call Me By Your Name is that Elio's a 17-year-old guy who's infatuated. He's got a crush, a pretty intense love. And like a 17-year-old, he's anxious about it. So the book will have, 2.5 pages at a time about him kind of going back and forth and obsessing about minute details in Oliver's behavior. He's like, well, he said that. Does he mean this? The way he said it, the look he had when he said it. And he's overthinking, which is what people do. I mean, that's what I do. I thought it was a very true representation of a teenage guy who's in love and kind of obsessing a little bit. I don't think that's a bad thing. It just became a bit much for me. I got to the point where I was like, okay, come on, because there were huge parts of the book where nothing was happening except Elio overthinking everything, which is not a bad thing. It's just, it became a bit much for me. But having said that, if you're telling people that Swimming in the Dark is like Call Me by Your Name, you're setting them up for the unexpected, because Swimming in the Dark, in comparison, there's a little bit of that, like, oh, does Janich like me? But then they get together pretty quickly, I think in like the second chapter. And then throughout the story, more and more happens. Like most of the story, they are together. Whereas the flip of that is Call Me by Your Name, they kind of get together towards the end. So the next part of this video, there's big spoilers incoming. So in both of these books, it's a bittersweet, I wouldn't say tragic, but they're both bittersweet love stories. In Call Me by Your Name, Oliver and Elio, they find each other and there's some serious passion and they deeply, deeply care about each other. But Oliver has to go back to America. And it's one of these relationships where they find each other with only a couple weeks to spare. So even if they do have that intense passion, it doesn't make much rational sense to put your life on hold for the other person. These kind of relationships happen where in real life, where it's miserable when it happens. It's heartbreaking, but it's just life. Sometimes the timing doesn't work out and it's the way it goes. And the two characters in Call Me by Your Name, they end in a way where, you know, years later, they're still sad about that relationship ending, but they're glad it happened. I don't know. It's a touching book. Swimming in the Dark, they also aren't together at the end, but for way different reasons. Janich is becoming further entrenched in the Communist Party, and Ludwig has seen the Communist Party ruin big parts of his life. There's a serious conflict there. The breakup in Swimming in the Dark kind of becomes a situation where this person you love deeply is not who you thought they were. Completely different motivations for breaking up in the two books. Here's another minor difference. I'm just going to be going through and rattling off all the differences between the books, apparently, just to prove Oprah wrong. In Swimming in the Dark, there is an aspect of shame about homosexuality from the main character. Ludwig, he doesn't feel good about it at the beginning of the book. He's like, why do I have these feelings about a man? And he doesn't know what to do with that. And a big part of the book is also his acceptance of who he is. In Call Me by Your Name, there's not really as much of that as far as I can remember. Like the two characters fall in love and then Oliver leaves and Elio's sad. And kind of towards the end of the book, Elio's father has this beautiful monologue where he basically says, you know, what you had there was something to be cherished and incredible. And it doesn't make a difference whether it's with a man or a woman. One of the things I really appreciated with Call Me by Your Name was that it's a gay love story in which it's just a love story about two men. There's plenty of room for more stories to be written about LGBTQ individuals grappling with their identity. But it was also really nice to just read a love story, an LGBTQ love story, where it was just a love story and it just played out, and it was the LGBTQ aspect is always accepted by the characters. In Call Me by Your Name, it's not treated as forbidden or anything really. It's love, and it's just as pure as any other love, and it was really nice. Now, my point in saying that isn't to rag on Swimming in the Dark. I like that these two books have completely different themes. Like, the thesis of this video is that I think it's reductive to market Swimming in the Dark by comparing it to Call Me by Your Name. I guess we're still at the point, unfortunately, in like mainstream media where the easiest way to market an LGBTQ story is to compare it to another LGBTQ story that was also popular, whether or not either of the stories have anything to do with each other. I would really like to see more and more LGBTQ stories being produced so that marketers don't feel this inclination to say, oh, it's like Call Me by Your Name just because Call Me by Your Name happened to be very popular. Reductive is the word that I thought of a lot when I was thinking of this video. To say that these two books are similar is fairly reductive of the qualities of them that make them both great. Again, I preferred one over the other, but they're both very different. And I love that they're very different. They're both attempting very different things. And they both happen to be about an LGBTQ love story, but they're both beautifully done for different reasons. So honestly, at the end of the day, it's not like this is some super offensive or egregious thing. I get why Oprah Magazine decided to do that. It's easy for people to then say, oh, it's like Call Me by Your Name. It must be a gay love story, and pick it up. And I'm sure lots of people who liked one of the books also liked the other one. I guess I would just like to get to a point where in mainstream media, one very popular LGBTQ love story is not compared to the other very popular LGBTQ love story. There should be more of these stories being circulated. And I think that's the end of what I have to say. So with that, I'm going to ask you lovely, beautiful people, if you have any recommendations about LGBTQ stories, please send them my way. I know Swimming in the Dark mentions Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin a lot, so I fully intend to read that very soon. If you have stories that you loved, please send them my way. I want to read more of it. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Please send me your recommendations. Please have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you again soon for more videos about praising books and also about complaining. So take care. Bye.